Get it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Mostly Wrong Opinions, a rewind episode. I'm Tyrone, and that is Devin. How you doing, man?
What's going on, man?
Nothing much, but a movie today, of course, a rewind, and this movie is A Place Beyond the Pines.
Is Romina here?
Who's that guy?
He's yours.
You weren't gonna tell me?
I heard from you in over a year. Just took off.
My son and I should be around him. I wasn't around my dad. Look the way I turned out.
How are you gonna take care of us?
All right, this movie came out in 2012, starring Ryan Gosling, Bradley Cooper, and Eva Mendes, and a host of other actors that was in this movie, like Mahershala Ali and what was that, Ben?
I think you mean Ben Middleton.
Yeah, Ben Middleton. He plays mostly bad guys in movies.
Well, he plays bad guys, and he plays like drunks and washed up people. Because this is at least the second time I've seen him play like some slurry old drunk, and he's awesome at it. This movie has like the cast in 2012. A lot of the side characters side actors weren't as big as they are now. So like this cast is like super star-studded.
Yeah, this film is directed by Derek Chainfrance.
Yeah, it looks like Cinefrance. Yeah. And he also did Blue Valentine, which I haven't seen, but I've heard great things about.
It was directed by him. It was written by him and co-written by Ben Koso. These names are crazy, people.
You know what's funny about the script though is apparently he got the budget because when he first gave the script, the script was 158 pages, as you know. Each page is typically a minute in a film, so they thought that was too long. So they said, look, if you can make it to 120 pages, I'll give you your budget and you can have your movie. So do you know what he did? He dropped the font and widened the margins, and no one noticed, and he got his movie.
Exactly, but the thing is this movie like 2 hours long?
Yeah, it's 2 hours and 30 minutes long. It is long. It's an epic film.
It's long, but it keeps you engaged.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Okay, now, people, this movie, how I feel like I describe it, is the sins of the father spills on to the son.
Absolutely.
Simple as that.
Yep. Each character we follow like a father figure, and then we follow their son, and then sometimes we even follow their son's son, and each one seems to have to pay for or sometimes benefit from whatever their father did. And it makes me think a lot of like privilege, because Bradley Cooper's character, he was a goody two shoes cop, and he wanted to change the department and be a good guy, but his father was a powerful Supreme Court judge, and something terrible happens, and Bradley Cooper cannot change things the way he wants to change things. He has to be a little more political about it, and before you know it, he becomes a full-on politician. Exactly. He ends up following his father's footsteps, even though he tried so hard not to.
Yeah. So let's rewind to the beginning of this film.
Absolutely.
This movie comes on when you see Ryan Gosling's character switching a switchblade, and that's the only thing that you hear him breathing very heavily. Great sound effect right there, where he's just breathing heavily, switching a switchblade, and he's in a dressing room, and he just pins that switchblade to the wall, and he walks out of there, put on this red jacket, and the camera is following him throughout the whole shot.
It's one long tracking shot, and it's him like walking through this carnival, and people are like taking pictures of him, and you totally understand who he is, why he's there, and then it ends in like a stunt, and you're like, whoa, and it's all one seamless shot. It's amazing. Yeah,
he is a one of those bike circus riders that go in and out of towns, and it's like usually three of them in this big sphere, and they're riding around, and very dangerous.
Yeah, it's like a stunt driver. But right, he moves from town to town, and he is described as a drifter.
And one moment he's in the town that he's in, and he's signing some autographs for some kids, and a very, very cold Eva Mendes walks out, and we can tell why she's cold. And, so she walks out, and you can tell that they have a some history together, and she just basically wanted to come and see him and all this other stuff, and then she's like, "Hey, let me drive you home, get on the back of the motorcycle," and he goes to the house, and the house that she's in is her new man's house.
But what's interesting about just their performances is you can tell that they have a history, but how each person views that history, you can tell just by their performances, right? Like Ryan Gosling, he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you," and he's like smiling, he's very like he's kind of excited. But Eva Mendes, on the other hand, she's very like forlorn. She's like, there's something going on. I got something to say. But she doesn't say it.
She doesn't say it. He drops her off, and he's still thinking about her. And then he just comes back and basically wants to take her out and stuff, but she's not there. She's at her job, and her mom comes to the door, and with a baby, and he's like, "Who's that guy?" And he's like, "She didn't tell me this."
Right. He comes to the door and he finds out that he's got a kid, that their little one night stand resulted in a little boy, and yet naturally he is absolutely pissed and he confronts her. And what's interesting is how he confronts her. He goes to her diner and he's like, "Do you have something to tell me? Don't you have something to say?" And this is important because his son says the exact same thing later on. He doesn't even realize that this was something his own father said. And again, this is like a big theme of the film, where the sons tend to follow the fathers, whether or not they're consciously aware of it or not.
Anything you want to tell me? Anything you think I might want to know before I leave here forever and I never come back?
You got something you need to tell me? What do you gotta tell me? Huh? You think I'm fucking stupid?
It turns into a thing to where he wants to be in this kid's life, but her thing is like, you're gonna be leaving. You're gone. You're a traveling circus act, and you're not around, and all this other stuff. And she said, "Plus, I got a man." Snap and all that, So, which is played by Mahershala Ali, by the way, before he was Oscar-winning Mahershala Ali.
Right. But can I just talk about the themes for a second, real quick? Yeah. I often talk about how I guess I'm big for like movies sticking the fundamentals of just like story beats and writing and directing and things like that, right? Because most movies can't do it. And I always talk about how characters need to make decisions, right? Now, what's interesting about Ryan Gosling's character is he's constantly making decisions, but they're often the wrong one. He's forever making terrible decisions, because like you said, he wants to stay, so he gives up his job as, I forget his name, his stunt name, Handsome Dave or something like that. Handsome Dan. Yeah. He gives up that job to try and mend fences with Eva Mendes. This is the stupidest thing in the world. She has moved on. And he needs to move on too. But he's made an awful decision. And this is also important because, so the director, apparently, he told Ryan Gosling, because Ryan Gosling's covered in tattoos, he told Ryan Gosling that he can pick out his tattoos and, he can just do whatever he wants. And Ryan Gosling chose to have a face tattoo. It was like a knife on his face. Well, before they started filming, Ryan Gosling was like, I don't think I want a tattoo on my face the whole time. But the director was like, no. That's the point of the film. You make decisions, and you gotta live with it. You gotta live with having this like big face tattoo throughout the whole film. And Ryan Gosling's character, especially Ryan Gosling's character, he keeps making these like bad decisions that he wishes he could take back, or he wishes he could fix. He wishes he could undo. And he has the hardest. It's so sad. He has the hardest time with it. But I don't want to go on a long rant here, but I like to juxtapose that with Bradley Cooper's character, who they have a run-in with later. Bradley Cooper's character is the exact opposite. If you notice, Bradley Cooper's character never makes any decisions. He's just there for the ride. People make decisions for him. His father makes decisions for him. The police department makes decisions for him. He's just there for the ride. He's just kind of paraded around as some sort of hero. Meanwhile, he's just like this. He feels powerless. He feels like he's got nothing to do. And he should be the hero, but it seems terrifying for him.
Yeah. And then it passes down to like his son in a way to where he's pampered, but he does not turn out like his father. He is an asshole. Okay, he's not. I mean, Bradley Cooper's personality is kind of asshole-y because he is a politician, but this dude is like, he wants drugs, and he's just like a teenage. We'll get to that part in a little bit later.
Well, Bradley Cooper was an asshole too. It's just Bradley Cooper's version of an asshole was that, you know, he usually smiled and he was all shucks about it, but he became a hero because he shockingly kills Ryan Gosling's character super early on. You're like, what? But he does it in cold blood. And it actually wasn't even cold. It was an accident. He walked into the room and got scared, and his gun went off, and he shot Ryan Gosling. But he had lied about it. He said that Ryan Gosling shot him first, and this lie, his whole life is built upon this lie. So he too is an asshole, and he goes along with some of the corruption in the department for a long time before he decides to work against it. So both characters are pampered. Both Bradley Cooper and his son are both pampered, and they are both douchebags and assholes who can do whatever they want, virtually consequence free.
Right. Let me go back to the part of Ryan Gosling. So after he gets back up with Eva Mendes and he wants to get back with her and raise the son and all that stuff, he finds out that she's like again still with this what is it, Mahershala Ali. Mm-hmm. And of course, you don't like that and stuff like that, so he just rides off, right? He goes in the woods and he's riding through the woods. And then for me, seeing this, I thought Ryan Gosling was in danger from Ben's character.
I did too, because the whole thing is they seem like rivals, right? They're like racing through the woods and then like staring at each other, and you're like, oh, this ain't no good. This is bad.
Yeah, but he was either, I felt that he was in danger or he liked him like he was gay or something. Mm-hmm. And basically it's this dude that's on the ATV and he's racing with him and he's like, you ride, pray to God. I probably got a job for you.
Cause I got a shop, repair shop on Washout Road.
Yeah, I guess you're really good with your hands, and Ryan does this, smokes cigarettes.
It's a really good performance by Ben Mendelsohn. It's amazing.
So he's working on cars and stuff. He's getting paid some money.
Right. Notably, it's not as much as he was making when he was with the traveling circus or whatever he was doing. Yeah.
So him and Ben is talking by the river, and he's like, "You're not gonna be able to feed that baby on fixing minimum wage." And he was like, "What do you want me to do?" And he's like, "To rob a bank." He was like,
there are other things that could be done,
Like what?
Well, you could rob a bank.
You're full of shit.
I'm not full of
shit. That's exactly what he says.
He did.
He's like, get the fuck out of here. And he's like, I'm serious. And then he's like, the reason people get caught because they're doing stupid stuff over and over again. I got it down to a formula.
Right. He said he'd been robbing banks for a while, and he said he just got finished robbing 4 banks, but it got a little too hot, so he moved to I can never pronounce it, even though I live in New York. Schenectady.
I don't know.
which by the way is the Mohawk word for the place beyond the pines. But go ahead.
Ooh, all right, cool. He basically agrees with it. Paints his car, paints his motorcycle black, and puts on a helmet and goes robs banks and stuff. And he's very successful with it. He's buying all these things for the baby and stuff. It gets to a point to where he comes there to Mahershala Ali's house. All right, and he's bought a crib for the baby because he's gonna fall out of bed. You're gonna hear the say. And he's just up there putting this stuff up in his house by himself. Mahershala Ali comes up to there. He's like, "Yo, you can't be up in my house." And he's like, "What you doing up here?" And so he was like, "No, get this shit, get the fuck out of my house." And he's ignoring him. He's just still putting the crib together. Get the fuck, and he grabs a wrench and cracks him over the head.
Pick up all this shit, man. Fuck you, man.
And it's like bleeding, and he goes to jail, and he has a record. He gets out, and then he just.
And it's because Ryan Gosling's character is a maniac. He even describes himself as a maniac. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm a maniac, and he is. He's an unstable drifter, and he's incredibly unpredictable. And he consistently. The only thing that's consistent in his life is he makes terrible decisions. He made a terrible decision to start robbing banks. He made a terrible decision to fight Marshall Ali. He made a terrible decision to try to get back in Eva Mendez's life.
Mm-hmm.
And this just snowballs out of control.
Snowballs out of control, and then his friend Ben, he's like, "It's getting too hot, man. I can't do it anymore. I won't do it." And then so he's like, "All right, then, fuck it. I'm just gonna take the cash and go." You know what I'm saying? And he went to go do it again, and
well, he didn't just want to go do it again. He went to rob 2 banks at one time. He's like, I want to rob 2 banks at one time while I'm robbing this bank, and the police are in this side of the town. I want to go to the other side of town and rob the other bank. And yeah, Ben Middleton's like, no. And Ben Middleton even chops up his bike to try and get him not to go.
Not to do it.
And he does it anyway.
Yep, he put a gun in his mouth, and he's like, "Give me my money." He's like, "I'm gonna go buy another bike," and he goes and do it anyway. He chops it up. He gets a new bike anyway, and it was horrible decision that he made. He basically gets surrounded by cops and starts chasing them. And this scene right here is so freaking cool. I don't know where they get the permit to do this, but they were chasing him throughout and it was great camera work through the graveyard.
Oh yeah, through a graveyard. He makes a shortcut through a graveyard, and they're like, oh. I know. It was the symbolism of him taking a shortcut through the graveyard on his way to essentially his death. It's like, wow, it's terrible. But what's also really interesting about like him, the way they filmed him riding the bike, the motorcycle, like the camera's like super close up, so it feels like really chaotic and scary and shaky, and like I feel like my heart was like in my throat the whole time.
Yeah. And he made the wrong decision, went into this wrong house. Bradley Cooper caught up to him. He's a cop at the time, rookie cop, and he catch up to him, goes in there, and exactly what you said earlier. The gun goes off, and he shoots him, and he falls out the window, and he breaks his neck, and he dies. And at the same time,
it's so shocking because you think Ryan Gosling is the main character. You think you're going to spend the whole movie with him, and then you're like, oh, that's it. He's dead.
Yeah, it's like, man.
Yeah.
And Bradley Cooper's, he can't really cope with this because he's like, I just killed a man, and everyone thinks I'm a hero, and he finds out that he had a son, and he's like, I have a son.
Right, he essentially killed his mirror image. He's like, and he has a hard time even looking at his own son after that whole ordeal
because they were the same age.
Yeah,
and now. He is a part of a department that has a bunch of crooked cops, and they take all this money and try to get some drugs from evidence rooms and stuff like that to sell it off, all type of stuff. Crooked cops.
But they've got him in a blackmail thing because they've given him some money from Eva Mendez's. They stole money from Eva Mendez and gave it to Bradley Cooper. So now he's like stuck in this terrible loop of covering for these crooked cops, and the only way he can do it is to essentially sell out his own department. And he gets help, he gets guidance from his judge father, and he essentially takes down the department, which is all bullshit because he took the money. He took the bribe money in the first place.
Exactly. He tried to give it back to Eva Mendez. She was like, "You ruined my whole life. I don't want that money.
Right.
I don't want it back from you." He goes to the last person that his father suggested was the DA.
But what's interesting about him going to the DA is that the DA initially was very suspicious of Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
That he knew that Bradley Cooper he knew Bradley Cooper murdered that other guy. He knew it, but again, because Bradley Cooper comes from privilege and he's got the father that he's got, everyone covered for him, and he managed to weasel out of any consequences. And again, just to fast forward a bit, his own son, same thing. Later on in the future, Bradley Cooper's son and Ryan Gosling's son, they end up becoming friends. They don't even realize that their fathers.
They don't even know that.
Yeah, they don't even realize their fathers intersected the way they did, and they're both arrested for possession of.
It was ecstasy.
Ecstasy, that's right, ecstasy, and they're both arrested for ecstasy. But Bradley Cooper's son gets off because, of course, his father is now grown into the DA himself. He's now the DA, and only Ryan Gosling's son has to pay a fine. He's the only one who gets in any trouble. Bradley Cooper's son gets off scot-free. His privilege allows him to live a consequence-free life. And what's also interesting about that is, like, Bradley Cooper was initially, he seemed to have a really bad relationship with his father. And his father tricks him into getting into the pool to convince him to, like, get into politics. Now, fast forward, Bradley Cooper and his son have a terrible relationship. But Bradley Cooper essentially tricks his son to staying with him by showing him the pool. And his son gets into the pool, and he's like, yeah, got him. He plays the same game. It's very interesting. Each boy ends up becoming their father.
Yep. I had to do this time thing in my head. I was looking in the background during the whole thing with Ryan.
I was like, what year is it?
And I was like looking at old cars and stuff. I was like, this has to be in the early 90s.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I was doing the same thing because Bradley Cooper was wearing like a windbreaker. I'm like, a windbreaker? Even for New York, that's a little tacky.
So Bradley Cooper's son is going to a new school because he's living with his dad. And Ryan Gosling's son is there, and they become friends and stuff. And Jason was played by Dan Duhan from The Cure from Wellness, and this is his roots of really being a great actor.
Performance.
Everything intertwines. Everything has a reason for what's happening in the story, beat by beat, and which is how a story needs to be written. Because if not, you have more Zack Snyder shit. Yes, I said it. I don't care. Okay, it's not as I'm not, and I keep saying this. I'm not saying that Zack Snyder is a bad person when it comes to visuals and stuff like that. But he cannot write a story different from a can of paint.
No, he cannot do it. And the writers for this movie, they're like showing off. Like I told you, like they're talking about the fundamentals. They have a character who purposefully makes no decisions, and they show how essentially horrible that is. Right? They take away all of Bradley Cooper's agency, and he's just essentially paraded around. It's highly suggested that maybe he could reach the upper echelons of politics, maybe even like the president. Right? His father's like, he's like, hey, you got a limp. Going limp goes a long way. Look at Roosevelt. Him being paraded around like a hero, you would think that would be great. But for him, it's terrible. He's living in hell. And his wife has divorced him. His kid hates him. And he's constantly battling all these political rivals. Like, it's terrible. Yeah. Ryan Gosling and Ryan Gosling's son, on the other hand, they cannot get out of their own way. Ryan Gosling's son, he could have just not gotten Oxycontin for Bradley Cooper's son, for AJ. Yeah. He could have just not done that. Just said no. But he did it anyway because he just makes terrible decisions. And in the end, ultimately, it's implied that AJ cleans up his act a little bit and follows his father's footsteps because his father's at a political rally and AJ is looking proud and like, wow, that is nice. And he's like clapping, he looks like he's accepting, his role in life. Meanwhile, Jason,
what type of politician he's gonna be?
Terrible one.
Yo, what's up? Welcome to the podium here. I'm the mayor.
Right. But meanwhile, Jason, he goes on to be a drifter, just like his father. He runs away from home, buys a motorcycle, and rides off into an unknown life. But it seems pretty clear to me that Jason is riding off to a very hard hard life, just like his father, going down terrible paths that will probably end violently. And AJ also going down bad paths, but a safe, cushy path where he makes virtually no decisions and people do things for him.
When Jason had Bradley Cooper's character in the woods after he finds out who he really is, and he invaded his house, smacked AJ over the head, and took him in the car, which was mirrored that AJ thought but Bradley Cooper's character thought he was going to die at the hands of Ray Liotta in the beginning. The same way, because he wasn't dying if he had kept that going that way. But the thing is, Jason spared him. It is mirrored to when Bradley Cooper shot his father out the window.
Right.
He didn't pull
Bradley shot Bradley without even looking. He was like, boom.
Exactly.
Right.
And then,
but you're right. Jason did not pull the trigger.
Yeah.
I kind of interpreted that as like maybe there's some hope for Jason's future. Maybe he's not going to live a life of crime and murder and thieves and drugs. Maybe he won't, but it feels very unlikely.
Man, I wish they had made a sequel or something, but it's something.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. Lots of long tracking shots, lots of long cuts where two actors, two talented people can just show off. You know what I mean? Like in these long epic cuts, and it's amazing. It's really, really good.
Yeah,
it's a long movie now. It's a long movie, but I think, like you said, I think it moves really fast. I think it has all these twists and turns. It's really hard to tell what is coming up next. I've seen this movie a million times, and I still feel like I don't know what's gonna happen. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. And people, when we talked previously about movies that have an extra long run time. And if we complain about it, it's because of the pacing and the writing within the film and the editing.
Message.
And this was done correctly.
That's exactly right. When I talk about the length of a movie being too long, what I'm really talking about, like you said, is the pacing. Usually these movies don't need to be this long. It's just padded out and it's boring. But this movie, like you said, I could have used another 2 hours. I was so intrigued, you know.
Exactly. I don't want to take my eyes off of people. So I'm gonna give my rating on this film. There's really nothing bad about this film. And, mostly from opinions, we don't aim to look for the bad in the movie. We just aim to look for the honesty within the script, the clarity within the director and the actors. And I'm just going to give this a 9.5.
Yep, I agree with that. You said we don't look for the bad in the script. I don't look for the bad. I don't look for the good. I look to be entertained.
Exactly.
And very, very few films can pass that threshold. Now, I know films are complicated and takes a lot. They are a labor of a lot of people, and it's a miracle that any movie comes out even reasonable because of how many hands end up touching the film. But so few films are even entertaining. But this movie is absolutely, I found it to be riveting. It's really sad. The direction is amazing. The actors are incredible. So you gave it 9.5. Tyrone, I'm going to give this my highest rating I've given any movie on Most Wrong Opinions. I, too, will give it a 9.5.
Bam, boom. Bam, boom.
Yeah, it's not too often I give out a 9.5, but I feel it's appropriate when a movie this long can keep me engaged. And we were talking about we're in a previous episode, we were talking about how sometimes you check your watch and you're like, man, there's still another 30 more minutes left in this film, like I did with Gunpowder Milkshake.
You too?
I'm like, gosh, that character's dead and it's taking another 30 minutes? My goodness. I never tapped my foot. I never looked at my watch. I was like about to fall out of my chair because I was on the very edge of it. So that's the reason why I hold this movie in such high regard. And it's also really nice when I know I like a movie that I've seen a long time ago, and then I watch it again, and it's still good. It's like, oh, thank God. Because sometimes you're like in a certain headspace, and the movie can be good one time, then you watch it again, it's not that great. But this movie, it holds up every time.
When it comes to Devin saying earlier about being entertained, it is not just necessarily just dramas. I know that recently, it's been being entertained about competent stories and competent writers and stuff, and most of that is depicted within dramas and thrillers. but it can happen in an action film too, i.e., Dread. Okay.
Exactly. A competent movie is the genre is just like a little sheen. You know what I mean? That's just it's like a flavor of the cake. You know, and maybe you prefer one flavor of cake over another, but if the cake doesn't rise, if the cake is missing a key ingredient like eggs or flour or something, and you don't recognize it as a cake, who cares what flavor it is, right? It's a mess, and that's kind of how I approach each film. I don't really care that much about the genre.
That makes total sense.
I always think about people who say like, oh, I don't like sci-fi or I don't like superhero movies. And I'm like, I personally don't understand that argument, right? Because who cares whether it's sci-fi or a superhero film? I care about the story, and I'm assuming most people do too. The genre is just like a little sheen. It's just a little flavor. Like it's not the actual like. It's not the actual cake.
Exactly. And I don't know how this movie went under my radar. And thank you, Devin.
No problem, man. No problem. It's one of my favorites.
That's our review for 2012's A Place Beyond the Pines. You go ahead and see this movie.
You know something, Luke? If you ride like lightning, you're gonna crash like thunder.
That is our episode for Mostly Wrong Opinions Rewind. I'd like to thank you for clicking on this video. And please do us a favor. Please subscribe to the channel. Get us up there. All right, get us up there. We got a lot more stuff coming. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell to stay up to date with everything we do right here on Mostly Wrong Opinions. Again, my name is Tyrone.
And I'm Devin.
And just remember, you can leave a like on this video. It really would help us out. Or you can leave a dislike. It is your opinion. But just remember, it's mostly wrong. See you in a future video. Peace out.